Uber fired the first shots earlier today when they said if they have to reclassify drivers as employees in the state of California, up to 158,000 drivers could lose access to driving. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Hey everyone, Chris here from Real Rideshare Stories. If you're new to the channel and you're looking for different things within the rideshare industry, whether it's updates to what's going on, news, tips and tricks for passengers and drivers, or what happens on real rideshare rides, start now by hitting that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Also make sure to check the description below for other helpful information and tips. Yes, Uber fires the first shots in response to California, the state suing them as they are trying to avoid AB5 and the possibility of reclassifying its drivers into employees. And they fired the first shots by saying upwards of 158,000 people could lose access to the driving app if they have to reclassify drivers as employees. Now, this does raise a number of questions like, is this just propaganda and persuasion to try to get voters to vote yes on that ballot initiative to exempt these companies from AB5? Or is this something that could have a real possibility? Now, anything is possible. And again, you do want to make sure you take in all information and make the best decision for you. So some economists are saying, no, that's not necessarily true, while other reports have gone out and saying upwards of 80 to 90% of drivers could lose access to the platform if the model has to transition to employees for drivers. So again, this is something that is going to really be multiple ways of looking at something. So when you do make that decision in November, then you will have all of the information. Now, this article is from CNET and it's titled, Uber says 158,000 drivers will lose work if they're reclassified as employees. And then right underneath it says, not all economists agree. Like I said, there's going to be a wide array of people that are going to kind of go with that and say, yeah, this is going to be something right, maybe even more extreme or even less. So again, it's just all about information. And if you want to read this article, a link will be in the description below so you can go back, reference this article, and see what it's saying. So it says Uber has been crunching data and came up with an internal analysis on what would happen if it reclassified its California drivers as employees. According to the company, again, this is something from Uber, passengers could expect to see prices go up 20 to 120%, and tens of thousands of drivers might be out of work. Of Uber's 209,000 drivers in the state of California, the company said 76% could lose their jobs on the ride-hailing platform. Rural areas would be hit hardest by these cutbacks, Uber said. Shifting to an employment model would force us to limit the number of people who could drive on Uber in order to manage costs that are fixed per employee, the company said. And then it says, most economists agree the system would change if drivers were to become employees, but some say numbers like these need more context. For example, rural areas already have minimal coverage by Uber, and some drivers only work a few hours a week. If drivers were employees, the platform would run more efficiently, said Michael Wright. We're going to go with that. Co-chair of the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics at the University of California at Berkeley. Some drivers who work more than 40 hours per week will reduce their hours. Many who drive less than 40 hours a week are likely to increase their hours. And again, that's because they're probably going to have scheduled shifts at this point instead of the freedom to choose when you want to go on and off. Uber's new analysis comes as a debate over gig worker classification in California heats up. Currently, most gig economy companies classify their workers as independent contractors rather than employees. That means the companies aren't responsible for benefits like health insurance, sick leave, and minimum wage. California passed a law last fall mandating that gig workers be classified as employees. The law AB5 went into effect on January 1st, and now it will be challenged in a court of law when the state has gone and sued Uber and Lyft. So instead of making workers employees, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, and Postmates spent $110 million to sponsor a ballot measure that could exempt them from AB 5. Last Friday, the measure officially qualified for the November election, and I did make a video on that just a few days ago. The issue is bound to get even more charged as the election nears, which is exactly what I said, because you're going to see a lot more push from these gig companies and even the state on persuading you how to vote. So several politicians like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris have backed AB 5. On Tuesday, Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden weighed in, saying on Twitter that gig economy giants are trying to gut the law and exempt their workers. It's unacceptable. I urge Californians to vote no on the initiative this November. Uber's internal analysis is based on numbers from before the novel coronavirus pandemic hit at the beginning of March. A company spokesman said newer data would likely show even higher prices and more job losses. In its analysis, Uber said rural areas would see higher price increases than cities. For example, San Francisco would have a 20 to 30% price increase, and the Central Valley would see a 110 to 120% increase. So in San Francisco, a $10 trip today would be $12, and in Central Valley, it could get as high as $22. And then this chart right here is kind of breaking down Uber's estimates on how much the price of a ride will increase by city if drivers are reclassified as employees. You can see the larger cities could have 20 to 30, 30 to 40%. And as they get into more rural areas like the Inland Empire, you're seeing 110 to 120% increase in what it could look like. So Uber said the higher prices would lower rider demand, meaning fewer trips and fewer work opportunities for drivers. Uber's analysis only takes into account having full-time drivers on the platform working 40-hour work weeks. So right there again, they're changing the numbers a little bit around because this would be considered a 40-hour work week for a potential driver, and that's how they're kind of figuring it out. Uber's conclusion is less drastic than a report published 2 weeks ago by the Berkeley Research Group, which said 80 to 90% of gig worker jobs would likely be eliminated if independent contractors were reclassified as employees. And if you want to see this report right here, I'm going to pull it up in just a minute, but you can click on that report right there and actually see it. It's a 4-page paper, and it kind of gives a little bit more context and also where they've referenced their information from. So Wright, who's offered several reports on gig workers and employment status, is currently conducting a similar study using California data. He said ride fares would likely increase if drivers became employees, but not as much as Uber estimates. He believes they'll rise between 5 and 15%, which would mean passenger demand would fall around 3%. This is looking at it from the less impact or the lower side of what an impact would be. Then Roy pointed to New York City as an example of what could happen in California if drivers were to become employees. In 2018, New York instituted a minimum wage for drivers, and this is New York City again. It's not the state of New York, it's only in New York City. And since then, the city has documented less traffic and higher wages for drivers. Uber and Lyft currently use their drivers inefficiently as they carry passengers only about half of the driver app time. That means for every 100 hours that people are online, there's less than 50 of those hours there's passengers in the car. So under AB 5, efficiency would increase, resulting in more pay for drivers, less traffic on the streets, and less air pollution. Traffic speeds would increase, making rides for passengers shorter. So that is one way you can look at it, as well as what Uber is saying. So you could see Uber is definitely trying to take the higher end of things when it comes down to it. And also then going back to, this report by the Berkeley Research Group. If you want to check it out, it's right here. Like I said, it is 4 pages. I'll leave a link in the description below to this report as well. And it talks about what it could be. So they're saying, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 79% of independent contractors preferred their arrangement over traditional job. You can see this was referenced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in May 2017. The release date was June 7th, 2018. So over 1 million Californians logged onto the platforms to earn income totaling over $6 billion. Approximately 80% of all drivers work less than 20 hours per week, and most of them work less than 10 hours per week. It says down here, as it's referenced again, the average work hour per driver is 5.3 hours per week, which includes all 0-hour weeks for all active drivers during the most recent year for which data are available. So it's showing you on average across the board for everybody that the average work hours per driver is only 5.3 hours. And then it says approximately 70% of all drivers work less than 20 weeks per year, and most of them work less than 5 weeks per year. And again, this is most drivers out there. Then it goes on to some of the information that they have found. And then talking about their conclusion, it says, given 1, the economic realities of this network platform company markets, 2, published research and data regarding the industry, and 3, the results of our in-depth research and economic modeling will conclude that requiring drivers to be classified as employees rather than independent contractors will significantly threaten the viability of the companies, significantly reduce the income opportunities of the drivers that currently depend on these companies for their economic well-being, and reduce the number of app-based drivers that the company will need to satisfy consumer demand by 80 to 90%, resulting in the immediate elimination of work opportunity for hundreds of thousands of individuals currently working as independent contractor drivers. Based on the latest data prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, requiring drivers to become full-time employees will reduce the number of needed drivers from more than 1 million to less than 100,000. While we do not have estimates of the total number of drivers currently accessing these platforms in a COVID-19 environment, the conclusion resulting from our economic analysis applies at all levels of demand. The employment model will reduce the number of drivers by 80 to 90%. Then it goes on to the authors of the report, so you can see that, and how the report was conducted, which they're giving all of this information to try to be as transparent as possible. So again, this is one other report that was designed and made, and this is the report of the Berkeley Research Group. And if you want to check this out a little bit more, I did skip over some of the things in there, so you can definitely go and check this out. So as I said, this could be just Uber trying to persuade and get people on their side to vote yes for the ballot initiative, while other people are saying, no, it's not going to be that extreme. It's not going to be that high. There's a whole varying degree. And even with that Berkeley Research Group, it's saying it was even more extreme. So yeah, Uber is probably going to go on the more extreme to make it more justifiable to say, yeah, please vote for this measure in November. Make sure you can stay online. Make sure you can continue driving as a driver. So they're going to definitely take that second report that I had talked about, and they're going to use that and run with it, as well as their own reports, where it's probably not going to be as extreme, which it showed, but it's still going to be on that higher end of things. So again, like I said, is this just propaganda for them to make voters change their mind and say, well, I want to drive, I want to continue driving, and I also want to make sure that it's affordable, where it's not going to go up, 30, 40, 120%. Who knows what will actually happen, but you're going to see more and more reports like this probably coming out from both Uber, Lyft, and even other companies that may be operating in the state, and some more information as they're trying to, again, persuade voters to vote one way in November, while other people and economists are saying, no, that's not really as bad as what they're trying to make it out to be. We estimate it much, much less. There will be some changes That's pretty much guaranteed, but it won't be anywhere near as much of an impact as what Uber or this Berkeley research group has been saying. And now, what are your thoughts on this, especially if you're in the state of California or in other states that may be looking at AB5-like legislation like New York State and a few others? What do you think about this? Do you think that Uber is blowing smoke and trying to make it more extreme than what it is to persuade voters in California come November? Or do you think that this is a real possibility? And then also, what do you like? Do you like the ballot initiative that was unveiled? Do you like the employee side of things? Do you want AB5 to be enforced? Or do you want it to continue on as it is currently right now without either the ballot measure or AB5? Comment below and let me know. Now that's the end of this video. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you'll be notified anytime a new video is uploaded. Also make sure to check the description below for other helpful information and tips, as well as the references to the articles that I had said. And as always, never drink and drive. Always tip your drivers, your delivery drivers, and your shoppers. And we'll see you next time.